Dum 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 dooby dooby doo. Dun 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 dooby doo. Dun 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 dooby dooby doo. I'm really bad at this intro. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dooby dooby doo. Oh gosh, JB, get it together. You have company over. What in the world is wrong with you? Is my breath stinking? No, she can't smell it. Oh well, let's get it. Let's get it going. All right, welcome to the JB show. What the hell's wrong with me? I have no idea. But welcome. Good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you guys have not already, go ahead and do me a favor. Go ahead and smash the subscribe button on the Substack that alerts you to whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles, so you have that right there. Also, if you guys have not already, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. That pushes me out into the algorithm. So thank you so very much to all of you. Also, a big shout out to all the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, anybody that sends me anything from PayPal. For all of you, thank you so much. And to everybody that's in the chat right now, I got it for you. I'm spreading it out because I got a guest and I want to make sure I am very respectful of her time. Just to let you guys know, we have two things we're going to be talking about today. Our later story, we're going to be talking about battling landlords. This is going to be a very interesting subject to get into. I cannot wait. The dude on the right is actually going to be your new hero. So we're going to be getting into that. But for now, we're going to be getting into my interview with my RB and comrade and sister from another mister, Sabby Sabs. So here we go. Sabby Sabs joins me live on the Jaybefaunt channel. Good to see you again, Sabs.
Hey, JB, what's going on?
All right, looking great. Sabs, okay, before I start, I wanted to say this because I was watching your show the other day and I was just like, man, I can definitely see a difference. I was looking at you and I was like, your arms look more toned. I was like, I'll be moving soon. Maybe she can help me lift some furniture.
Yeah, I've been in the gym just working on my fitness.
She's my witness.
On my fitness. No, I spend a lot of time in the gym. It's so funny because on stream, this is probably, unless I'm like going out with my friends or something like that. Other than that, I kind of live in workout clothes. Like, I'm not kidding. That's what people don't see. I have on like workout leggings right now. Like, that's typically what I would wear the most is workout clothes. Except for like if I do a show, if I go on someone's show, or if I do my own show, I'm gonna wear like real clothes. If I go out with my friends, I'm gonna have on real clothes. But most of the time, like, I kind of live in athletic gear. I'm not kidding.
You have something tells me you have the fluffiest socks and the fluffiest house shoes ever. You probably really enjoy your house shoes, don't you?
Yeah, I have fleece socks.
Yes, I knew it. I was just like, whoa, okay. But I don't know. It's just you, like, because every single time I see you, you're in sneakers, and I'm like, she really does like comfort when it comes to what she steps in. That's what I got that feeling.
Yeah, if I know I'm going to be walking around for a while, like if I'm going to go cover anything on the ground, I'm wearing sneakers. If I'm at the gym, obviously I'm wearing sneakers. If I'm not going to something that's like a nicer event, like if I'm going out for a friend's birthday, then I'll put on like, either my boots or heels or something like that. But most of the time, I'm wearing like either casual sneakers or workout sneakers, like most of the time.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I'm the same way. Like, I'm always in pajamas. I don't know what it is, but I'm at home. I'm always in pajamas. You come to my house, you knock on my door, you're going to see me in a t-shirt and pajamas. That's pretty much it, because that's how I am. But that's a little too much TMI. But one of the things that I want to get into is I wanted to get your reactions to this particular video. I'm not going to play the entirety, but there's pieces of it that I would like for you to react to. And one of the reasons why I want to is because one of the things that I take inspiration from is that, especially, you've always talked about Black issues on your channel, but you seem to have ramped it up even more because it feels like there needs to be more of it than we've had before. Because a lot of times what we see on the left is a lot of times we'll have people that say, well, don't talk about race, only talk about class. And you have said this before, that class is an identity. And so if you can give me just a little bit of the reasoning more deeper of why you're expounding more on Black issues as of late.
I think part of it has to do with when we talk about Israel and Gaza, right? Like, I saw some of the hypocrisy. I saw some of the same people who said not to focus on identity politics have no problem all of a sudden focusing on the Palestinian struggle. Now, all of a sudden, all these people are passionate about Palestinian people. And I think, like me, you, and the rest of us at RBN, we actually were talking about this years ago. Like, we didn't start talking about the Palestinian struggle after October 7th. We started covering this from the very first year that we started. I think even for my channel, that was the first foreign policy issue that I covered. So I think that it was interesting to see a number of people that have explained multiple times, like, not to focus on race whenever it was particularly an issue that deals with Black people. Don't talk about race, just focus on class. Don't talk about identity politics. And as you pointed out, I've said to people that class is also an identity. So it's really weird. But what was become very obvious to me is that they didn't want you to focus on the Black identity, right? They didn't want you to focus on the LGBTQ identity, because those identities don't work well for their audience. That's what that was really about. But all of a sudden, after October 7th, now all of a sudden it's okay to focus on an identity that your audience is going to agree with for the most part. So for me, it was just, I had to call out that hypocrisy. And then two, I wanted people to fully understand that what the Palestinian people are going through, there is a direct link and connection to Black struggle that those of us that are American descendants of slavery have had to go through in this country, right?
Yeah.
And of course, our ancestors. So I think that if you can call for repair for the Palestinian people, then you need to explain to me why you're against calling for repair for American descendants of slavery. So I think October 7th has really pulled the mask off of some people who were doing that. And I think it's really important. So we got to focus on those issues. At the same time, I've seen people that are Palestinian or are from the Muslim community call for an uncommitted vote, or calling for a ceasefire and saying, no, Joe Biden, you have to do something for our community in order for you to receive our votes. Well, then again, I wanted to take that and relate that back to the Black community about why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Why aren't we calling for some type of concession for our vote? I'm not going to vote for the Democratic Party regardless, but for those who just do so because they're party loyalists, why aren't they calling for some type of concession from the Democratic Party in order for the Democratic Party to get their vote? So I tried to make the connection there so they can really understand that other groups do this. Other groups have received concessions from the Democratic Party, and African Americans, for the most part, have not. Yeah. So that was my take on that. That was my thing, is to get people to wake up and understand, see how the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are willing to bend over backwards for Israel and for the Israeli people, and see how when you ask for concessions, they tell you now's not the time, or no way that's going to happen. Forget about it. So I was hoping that October 7th has really woken people up.
Yeah. And just as to add to your point, when we see, and let's be real, what's happened in Gaza we have witnessed a 75-year Holocaust. See, a lot of people will take issue with me using that word, but if you look at the actual definition of a Holocaust, it doesn't mean one specific event that happened in history. It is a massive, basically, death that's caused by genocide and all these different things, against a particular group of people. You have the Holocaust that happened in Germany in the late 1930s and early 1940s, right? That everybody knows. And all you got to say is the Holocaust, and that's what everybody means. But a lot of people do not talk about the 500-year Holocaust that has happened on Turtle Island against the indigenous people of this land. They do not talk about the Holocaust of West African peoples through the transatlantic slave trade. That's also a Holocaust. They don't talk about the Holocaust that happened in East Timor. They do not talk about the Congolese Holocaust that happened at the hands of King Leopold. These are Holocausts that have happened over time that a lot of people don't really pay much attention to, particularly if the Holocaust happens to somebody who's more melanin abundant. So I think that we need to also, if you are willing to side with the Palestinians, and want freedom and reparations for the Holocaust that they are enduring, which they absolutely need, then you should also do it for the Black people, the American descendants of slaves that are living among you right here. And you also should be standing in solidarity with the people who are of indigenous descent that are asking for the land back that was stolen from them from European powers 500 years ago. So it's like, if you're going to be consistent, then be consistent. That's basically my argument.
That's right. I agree 100%. And even when we talk about what happened to slaves that were, brought to this country, we're talking about the fact that, some of them didn't even make it to the United States because they got sick because of the horrible treatment on the boats. So they would actually take them and throw them into the ocean. They would actually take the slaves and throw them into the, so these are things that are not talked about. And when we talk about what happened with slavery, it's been whitewashed in reference to textbooks and educational institutions. It has been whitewashed. So you don't know the thick of it. Like, I think JB and I know some of the real horrors that happened that you'll never see, like, in a textbook. So there's even more. It goes deeper. But there's that, and then there's Jim Crow, there's redlining, there's the crime bills. This goes on and on and on. And there's a reason why you look around and you see we're only 13% of the population. So you have to talk about the things that happened after slavery as well, not just what happened during slavery.
Absolutely. So with that being said, this was a perfect setup. So thank you so very much. Let me share this right now, because I think this is really going to, it's from 1963. So we're going back a long time, but what was said is extremely relevant today. I'm not sure if you ever saw this, Sabs, but let's get into it.
People like Agnes Myers, Roy, president of the board of the NAACP, and other white liberals and friends have cautioned against having a major demonstration for civil rights this summer. How do you?
Now, what he means by the major demonstration of civil rights this summer is the 1963 and 1964 March on Washington, where Dr. King actually gave the I Have a Dream speech. So this is before that. So they're planning for that.
Well, it's our position in the NAACP that the opponents of civil rights legislation left no doubt as soon as the president spoke. In fact, they didn't wait for him to speak. They began announcing their opposition and what they intended to do. They were going to filibuster. They were going to hold up appropriation measures. They were scaring the country that they weren't going to get a tax cut on account of civil rights. They're doing all the boogeyman stunts. And if they're going to use Washington as their base of operations for opposition to this bill, we don't see anything wrong with using Washington as our base to indicate support for this bill. And in my estimation, this march is going to be a 100% outpouring of the disgust and distress of Black Americans and white liberals over the way the Congress has handled this bill.
I think that in any such demonstration as the march, which is planned, you will expect loud outpouring of cries, of fears from many, many people who don't want it to take place, who are afraid that something might happen. But it seems to me that it reflects a lack of understanding of the nature of the times in which we are living. The fact that Negroes all over the country are concerned and are aroused and must express their feeling. They've waited 100 years, and that's too long to wait.
But what about white friends and liberals who have worked in these organizations for many years, who now say, look, let's not go this fast. Let's not...
we don't have people like that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Our telephone is ringing with white people who want to get into the march.
We don't judge our friends on the basis of the color of their skin. We judge them on the basis of the fact of whether or not they are willing to go all the way with us. If they are not willing to go all the way, then they are not friends of ours.
Sabs, just that one part from James Farmer. He said, we judge them if they're willing to go all the way with us. Your thoughts, please.
It sounds very familiar, even in reference to today and building movements and any type of, I guess, grassroots actions that we have been a part of or we've wanted to try to build. It really speaks volumes. And it's true. There's a difference between having unity with someone and having solidarity. And you and I have talked about this quite often. I am past the days of wanting to have unity. Unity is the easy way, right? It's much harder to have solidarity with someone because that means you have to put someone else's needs above your own. And what I have found, particularly with some of the people that consider themselves to be white allies, what I have found is that they're not willing to actually have solidarity. Not all of them, but you have to think about what he just said in that video and how many people were a part of the march on Washington, both Black and white. They, like he said, they were willing to go all the way. And what I think we found, particularly when we talk about movements or movement building in this country, is that a lot of these people who say that they want unity with us, they're not willing to go all the way. And when you say that and you push back on that and you say, I'm looking for someone willing to go all the way, all of a sudden you're divisive. So you see how things have changed since the civil rights movement when we talk about movement building. And that's why I always use that one as a good example of how to build a movement, because they knew what the difference was between unity and solidarity. And they knew that the people that were going to be marching along with them had to be willing to go all the way. And that is not divisive. That is called solidarity. That's just how I see it.
Yeah. You know, and the thing is that a lot of times, you know, are you willing to have solidarity with people, even if it does not benefit you personally?
Right.
Are you doing it because it's the right thing to do, or are you because you're going to get a benefit out of it? Because how would land back for the indigenous people benefit me? Like directly, how would it benefit me? But I support it. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, right? That's why I stand with them. Why do I stand with people who are trans and their rights, right? Because number one, they're workers too. Number two, it's because it's just the right thing to do. Now, some people may be like, oh my God, they're trans, whatever. But the thing is like, look, they're workers, they're people. They're not harming me, and they're making, and by them being workers, it behooves me to have solidarity with them, because if I want to have a workers movement, there they are. They're right there. Just because one puts on a dress or just because one puts on overalls, it doesn't mean a damn thing. What actually matters is us coming together. And so,
right.
Go ahead.
That's right. And that's why I think when people point out those issues, when they focus on talking, or I guess really like harping on, like, you know, those culture war issues, when they focus on attacking people of a certain identity. And what they're really trying to say is that they want those people to put aside who they really are to go along with the majority. That's really what they're asking them to do. They're asking them to forget the fact that they're LGBTQ, forget the fact that you're Black, and just go along with what the majority wants so that the majority feels more comfortable instead of acknowledging the fact that these people are workers too. So it's like, and this is why some people will say, when you call for a working class movement, this is why some Black people have said, you're basically speaking about white workers. That's why some people say that, because they've received that type of rhetoric in reference to Black workers, in reference to LGBTQ workers, etc. I mean, we can do all of this at once. And this is another reason why I pushed back and I said that podcasters should not lead a movement. We have no problem being a part. I don't think we couldn't be a part of it. I think, but as role as media, I think it's great for us to amplify that movement, to give it as much attention as possible. If we want to participate, that's great. If we want to cover it on the ground, I think that's awesome, which you and I tend to do, but I don't think we should lead it. And I say this again because we've seen how this has happened before in the media space, where a podcaster will take the lead on some type of movement or action. And then the next thing you know, when they start to get backlash from audience members, then all of a sudden it's, let me walk away from this because this is going to hurt my brand. And that's why I don't think that they should be the ones to lead those movements. These movements need to be led by people that are part of the grassroots, the people that are in the streets. And there are organizations that have been doing this for quite some time. The Palestinian protests that you see happening all across the country, that's not led by podcasters. Those are predominantly led by Answer Coalition, PSL, like these organizations that really got thousands of people out there in the streets. And that's the way it should be, So I think that when we talk about building movements, we need to look at what has already been done before in the past. And then you can look at maybe some of the mistakes that they made and learn from those mistakes. But I feel like one of the things that's been holding us back is that people are trying to reinvent the wheel, and you're just making the work harder for yourself, right? Sometimes you don't need to do that. Sometimes all you need to do is take something that was already done, tweak it a bit, and go with that.
I would also like to add that politicians should not lead movements. You see, we're constantly looking for a movement leader that's running for office. They're the complement, not the actual movement themselves. It's like, how can I put it? It's kind of like okay, you and I, we like food, right? Full disclosure, sorry to put your business out there, but you had burgers yesterday, right? So, with that being said, a politician is the condiment, not the burger. Right? Do you get what I mean? Because the thing is like they're there to maybe enhance the movement, but they aren't supposed to lead the movement. Who eats a ketchup sandwich?
I love that, JB.
Right? No, the meat needs to be the people on the ground. So if you have a politician that's going, I'm here to lead a movement. No. It's not. It ain't going nowhere. Because once November happens, or once, November of any election year happens, then what happens? Right? Because we saw this with who? Bernie Sanders. Same thing. It should not be a politician that's leading a movement either. That's just, I guess you got to say that.
No, I agree 100%. I think Bernie taught all of us that lesson, right? When he said that he would still be outside with his movement, with his people, if he lost the election. And obviously that wasn't the case. So I think we have definitely learned from that experience. At least I hope most of us have learned from that experience that, like, these are people that are trying to protect a political career that they have in their political future. So at the end of the day, I mean, they're going to try to rally as much support as they can possible. But at the end of the day, they're going to look out for themselves.
Absolutely. Let's continue. This is just beautiful the way this continues.
Now, we've said that these are interracial organizations. But you 5 gentlemen are Negroes. You are assuming the leadership, and you are asking white liberals and white friends to go along with the Negro speaking for himself rather than speaking through white surrogates.
I would like to make this point because I think there is a misconception that any white people who happen to serve on your boards or committees are therefore automatically there to exercise control and restraint. Yeah. This is not the experience of the Urban League. There are many white people who serve on our boards who are asking for more militancy. I speak for the National Urban League at their insistence, not at my demanding, because they feel that a Negro is best able to express the hopes and the longings of his people.
We ought to be clear that there is a desire on the part of Negroes for self-expression through leadership of civil rights organizations. This is important because Negroes have been denied that self-expression for so many years. But this does not mean, in any sense of the word, as far as I'm concerned, that white persons who are sincere cannot participate and cooperate.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that this also points to is, I know it was you, me, Colin, and Afeni on Sabby and JB show on RBN a couple weeks back that talked about who should lead movements. I think one of the things that has to be harped on is, because I know we talked about podcasters, but there's another side to this. And I think it's kind of uncomfortable for some people. But, and I think I've heard Afeni say this too. But the people who really should be leading the movements should be the people who are the most disenfranchised. What say you?
Right. Right. The people that are affected the most. Right. Now it gets tricky though, because if you think about some of the revolutionary leaders in the past, a lot of them were PMC, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara. One could argue even Marx.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Du Bois was, affluent.
Right. A lot of them were. It just seemed like back then they were willing to go all the way, even though they were like PMC. They were willing to call for and be about, a revolution. Mm-hmm. Whereas today, it just seems like a lot of them are in support of reform. Yeah. So it's been watered down. But no, I totally understand where Afeni's coming from, because those are the people who are predominantly affected. Like the people who, like, we think about Medicare for All, when we had those marches for Medicare for All, like a lot of the people that were actually out there, and you saw this because you were at the march in Orlando. I was at the march here in Boston. A lot of the people that were part of the march were people that were working class that had a story. They had a Medicare for All story. They were directly impacted and affected by the healthcare system in this country. Now, those weren't necessarily the people that were the speakers at those events. The speakers tend to be a little bit more like bigger names. Some of them former politicians, some of them medical physicians. But I think that really said something when you had all different types of people just kind of come together and march for Medicare for All in this country, who had all been impacted by the healthcare system in some way, shape, or form. And I think that really, really says something.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't get to finish that piece that I wanted to due to the sake of time, but there's this one part that I really wanted to harp on. And this is more of the cherry on top that I wanted to share with you as well. This is going to be some thoughts by James Farmer as well. James Farmer, this dude was speaking bars. Let's go to this part.
Well, aren't we saying, gentlemen, that a program has not yet been worked out to grapple with the magnitude of this problem in the United States, both North and South?
It's not regional.
So right. Isn't there a need now, because of the urgency and the seriousness of the situation, to develop a sort of crash program to lift the standards of the Negro and to get rid of the underlying conditions that produce so many social evils and develop so many social problems? I think this is what we face at this time. And I know it leads to the whole question of discrimination in reverse and all of that. But I think we've got to face the fact in this country that because of the legacy of slavery and segregation and the seeds of injustice planted in the past, that we have this harvest of confusion now, and we're going to continue to have it until we get to the root of the problem. Well, that's that root and the rats go together. Yeah. The announcement of the Real Estate Brokers Association some time ago advising their members not to pay any attention to fair housing laws, that property rights still came first. And when you think of the billions of dollars in this country tied up in real estate, there isn't much that the President of the United States could do by going and looking at some slums. Let's be fair. Yeah. Well, the real power and obstacle there is the property rights structure in this country, which isn't concerned with how many kids are bitten by rats or how many people live in slums.
Most of you recall that we did announce recently, our board adopted this domestic Marshall Plan, and this was consciously given this name because, if you recall, this country has spent some $12 billion on rehabilitation of Europe, war-torn Europe. In a 4-year period, we have spent millions on refugees from Cuba and from Hungary. We spent all kinds of money giving free education to veterans after the war and making it possible for them to buy homes. I think the time has come for us to honestly face up to the fact that this tremendous gap due to historical deprivation that the Negro has suffered will not be closed not quickly enough unless we consciously and deliberately establish programs that call not just for equal schools, but better schools and better teachers and provisions for housing and conscious recruiting at the level of employment. This has to be done in order to get rid of what I see too much of, and that is the feeling of despair and hopelessness.
I think that Negroes have had special treatment in this country for 350 years, special treatment of a negative sort.
That's right.
Now what Whitney and the rest of us are asking for is some special treatment of a positive sort to wipe out that gap.
Are you?
That's the part I wanted you to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Some special treatment of a positive sort, right? Which has been done for other groups, or people who don't understand, like the Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps in the United States. They were given reparations, and they were given cash reparations, by the way. It was Ronald Reagan who signed that into existence, believe it or not, and their descendants. So you got to know these things when people push back against reparations for American descendants of slavery. So that happened for the Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps. And then you got to talk about the survivors of the Holocaust, which there are still, yes, Germany paid reparations as they should have, but there have still been reparation measures that have been implemented by the United States since then. And this is another thing that people don't talk about. So we need to talk about what Kathy Hochul just did. Kathy Hochul just signed, again, implementing more reparations towards Holocaust survivors. This was recent. So these kinds of things have been happening for years. There was also reparations that was implemented under Barack Obama for Holocaust survivors. So nobody said anything. No one had a problem with it. Everyone was okay with it and cool. But the moment that American descendants of slavery ask for reparations, it is a problem. So again, as I pointed out before, when people say don't talk about identity politics, they're mainly talking about don't talk about Black people, don't talk about being Black, don't talk about race means don't talk about being Black. I want to be very clear about that. Don't talk about identity politics in reference to gender and sexuality. Don't talk about being LGBTQ. You can talk about being straight though. This is what this is about. I want people to understand, because if you can sit there and if you can understand what the Palestinian people are going through, which rightfully so, and advocate for, rightfully so, then you can understand what has happened to American descendants of slavery in this country throughout the years, and you can advocate for that as well. But you don't, because your audience would be against it. And that is why, once again, I say podcasters should not lead movements. And I'm so surprised that people can't see through this till this day. Like, you really have to see through this and start doing your own research. If anybody can tell you, don't talk about race, don't talk about that, that's identity politics, just focus on class. One, they don't know that class is a part of identity politics. So there's that. Two, they do know it, but they know that sells better with the audience because they don't want to talk about the racial issues because their audience members won't like it. So there's that as well. And it still boggles my mind till this day that people haven't woken up to what is really being said. Do you think that MLK would have told you, don't focus on class, don't focus on race at all, just focus on class? Do you think Martin Luther King would have, not MLK, excuse me, do you think Malcolm X would have said that? Do you think Fred Hampton would have said that? No,
Yeah.
none of these people would have said that because they realized that class and race actually intercept. So why are people buying into that today?
Yep, absolutely. And due to the sake of time, I want to be very respectful. We are a little bit over than what you said, you know, as far as time. But, you know, I just want to thank you for being able to, you know, lay this out as you know, as strongly as possible in very clear, concrete terms, you know, and your analysis was deeply necessary for this. And I really wanted to share this with you because I think it's that important. And also, if you can let everybody know what's going on for your show. I know you have your show tonight. And I know you also did an interview on Rising earlier today. So what do you got going on?
Yeah, today was a busy day. So I was on Rising earlier this morning. Check that out. We talked about AOC donating money to the DCCC. I will be live tonight on my channel, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're doing 4 news stories. I think 3 of them are foreign policy, actually. And we're going to talk about the SCOTUS ruling in reference to protests. So don't miss that because that affects all of us. And then I think Thursday, I may be live earlier in the day instead of in the evening because I think Max Blumenthal may be coming on. And if that happens on Thursday, then I will definitely be live earlier that day, not in the evening.
All right. So there may not be a Sabby and JB show this Thursday, just letting you guys know because Sabs is a very, very busy woman. Sabs, I want to thank you so very much for coming to my humble little channel. It means the world to me.
You're doing the damn thing, JB.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. All right. And also, just to let you guys know, I'll put Sabby's. You don't really need it because, I mean, you're way bigger than me, but I'll put your channel in the description as well so that if you guys would like to turn into Sabby Sabs, you guys have her. And then also you can tune in to us at Revolutionary Blackout Network as well.
Thanks, JB.
All right. Bye-bye, Sabs.
Bye.
All right. So thank you so very much to my homie, my sister from another mister, for joining me in there today. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in for this interview. I think it was a great conversation. That was some of the what I wanted to get her perspective on, because this video that I was sharing is really showing that what we have been going through for a long time really still we haven't seen the results of what we've been fighting for to its true fruition. And we get a lot of people who go, well, things are better than what they were. And it's like, yeah, it's marginally better. But, you know, if you look at, for instance, housing, and if you look at the wealth gap and things like that, it's really going back. It feels like it's going back in reverse. And in some ways it is going back in reverse. And so this also is a class fight in itself, as well as a fight for liberation for different identities of us. So I just want to say that I want to thank Sabby for joining me for that as well. Also, if you guys have not, please make sure to give the stream a like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. Thank you so very much for that as well. And if you guys have not already, you guys go to jaybefaunt.substack.com so that you guys get aware and ping whenever there is a notification for a live, a clip, or any articles that I write. Now, what are the things we're going to do before we get into the chat? We are going to go into thanking the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, as well as anybody that sends me anything via PayPal. I just want to thank every single one of you. And I'm updating this list as we speak, but it's been a harrowing few days. But thank you so much to all the patrons on Patreon, on Coffee, as well as anybody that sends me anything via PayPal. And yes, my channel is demonetized. So if you guys like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. It means the world to me. Thank you so very much for that. And in addition to, and furthermore, while I'm at it, I'm going to share with you guys how you guys can support. So we'll be going straight there to Patreon. So let's share this. Here you guys go. If you guys would like to, here are the tiers. Here are the tiers. You have JB members, Solidarity, Comrades, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. Thank you very much. And just as a thank you to a new patron, we have Joseph Murky. Thank you so very much for joining as well. So good to have you part of the fam. All right. Thank you so very much. So while we're at it, we're going to go to the chat and get a lot of the thoughts from a lot of you, and then we'll be going into our story, our next story as well. So while we're at it, let me make sure I have this popped out so that we can see what people are saying. All right. Now, JB got it together. Okay. All right. So thank you so much to Hemp Car. Says, do the right thing, Spike Lee. And that's the truth, Ruth. Thank you so very much for that, Hemp Car. Thank you so much on The Rock. So let's go to the chat. Let me see here. Uh-oh. All right. We had Case Study QB in the chat. Good to see you, Case. All right. Appreciate it. Nice to have you in here. Let me see. Oh, this is a good one. Randall Online says, also for insurance claims, they got paid if slaves died of natural causes. Yes. You know, a lot of these companies, you also had insurance claims on slaves. I think it was one of the companies was Aetna, and then I think it was Wells Fargo, but back then I think they were by a different name. It might have been Wachovia, but they also put claims on slaves. So if a slave died, then the slave owner would actually get a payment for the loss of life of a slave. Also, while we're at it, did you guys know that slave owners also got reparations after the Civil War, so that for lost slaves? So if the United States was willing to pay reparations to slave owners for lost slaves, for the side that lost, I think we can do the same thing for those of us who are American descendants of slaves in this country. I think so. So yeah. Oh, this is also an interesting point. A lot of people don't realize this, but it says the feeding patterns of sharks in the Atlantic changed to match the paths taken by the slave ships. Yes. This is also one of the gruesome facts that a lot of people don't realize, that essentially a lot of our ancestors were food for the sharks because they would jump from the ships. So this is something I think a lot of people really need to realize. And we still haven't gotten any type of reparations for that, right? Let's go to, let me make sure I go to this. All right, let me see. Oh yeah, Eric T. Red, also with the Sabby Sabs show. It says March for Medicare for All had a clear demand. Yes, and the thing is that these clear demands have to be met. You know, and if you guys would like to, I actually did a series where I interviewed with Eric and Corey about the 11 demands. I have that in the playlist. If you guys would like to go ahead and take a look at that. I also have that up there as well if you guys would like to. So yes. Let me see who else. Hang on. You know what? Never mind. Not going to give that person any play. Leroy says, honestly, I consider Libby, Montana having universal health care because of the healthcare concerns caused by the government, a form of reparations. That's an interesting point. Well, yeah, because the thing is that you have to, the root word is repair. So what you're doing is you're basically saying, you know, we allowed this to happen, so therefore let's repair or bring people back to the point where they were before the damage was made. So that's really the root word of repair. So yeah, I see exactly what you mean there. Rando Online says, some say that talking about slavery and reparations is anti-white. It's funny when people say that. It sounds like they're saying it out of a sense of guilt. I mean, if you don't want it to happen, then repair what was done in the first place. You know, that's pretty much it. Let me see. Layer of Snark says, please have more of these videos. We need more movement building talks than anything else. I look forward to these the most. Oh, thank you very much. All right, so I want to make sure that we get to Layer of Snark says, why demonetize? Because I shared some war footage of what the Palestinian resistance was doing on October 7th. And the masters of this platform did not like it. So therefore, they removed the video and then they permanently demonetized me. And it was only a warning. It wasn't a strike. And yet now no longer monetized. So yeah. Good to see you, Roger. Good to see you in the chat as well. All right. So Roger Meadow says, Montanans have the power to run citizen-initiated constitutional amendments and citizen-initiated state statutes and veto referendums to take what they got in Libby and expand to everyone. That is also a very good point. Now, I'm going to move on to the next subject, because I want to make sure that I get this done, because I'm trying to be out here by no later than 3:15. But let's share, and we're going to go into the next story of battling landlords. This is an interesting story to tell you guys. So I'm going to share this particular video because this gentleman, Jordy Vanderberg, is really fighting the good fight on behalf of renters. Hang on. Okay. Should have had that prepared already. So let me share this really quick so you guys can see. He's doing the damn thing out there in Australia, doing great work. And we'll get into exactly why. But it's just, he's a character, which is what I love. So let's just take a look.
Hello, haven't made a video in a while because I've been a bit busy, so I thought it might be time for another video. A lot of people have been saying like, oh, this guy's just a commie, this guy's a socialist. I am a socialist, but adverse possession is not even a socialist idea. That's a libertarian, a liberal idea. The thinking behind it and the law behind it is that the same law that gives you the right to own property also gives you an obligation to productively use that property. So if you don't use that property and someone else does, that property should be their property. Socialists believe that property is theft, which is a different thing. Google it. It doesn't actually mean the words that it says. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. Bella, are you good? Property is theft doesn't mean that your labor shouldn't be able to get you property. It means that your labor shouldn't be able to be exploited to get property. And that's how property works in Australia. If you own an investment property in Australia, someone else, a worker, pays your mortgage through their rent. So someone else is paying for your property, which is like that. I think that's wrong, but that's how it works in Australia. Anyways, that's not what this video is about. This video is about some vacant homes. There's one in Michigan, one in California, one in Switzerland, one in Northern Ireland, one in Winnipeg. The Zurich one actually isn't vacant. It was, check out this account on Instagram. It's being squatted in and it's sick, and they've already publicized it. So I don't really mind sharing it as well, because they're pretty, decent size as well. But check them out on Instagram. They're sick. Anyways, if you haven't already, definitely consider joining the Renters and Housing Union, particularly if you are a squatter or if you are considering squatting, because it's really important that you do it with the community and with all the kind of information that you can get to teach you how to and what to look for, what to avoid. Anyways, join Rahu. Love you.
This gentleman is getting popular on TikTok because he is showing homes that are vacant for people to squat in, because he does not like that there are people unhoused in Australia. And now he's moving to showing homes that are vacant in the United States of America. And landlords are pissed. So I want to share this as well. So before we get into the video, because he's kind of sort of confronted on a news program in Australia, but I want to share what we're going through right now. So, of course, everybody knows right now that I literally have a housing crisis going on right now, where my landlords are literally selling the unit that I live in and thus kicking me and my mother out of the house. So we essentially, for right now, don't have a place to go. So that's what we're going through, right? So, of course, this, is close to my heart. But I also want to share what a lot of us are going through. So shout out to Roger Meadows for sharing this with me. This is these are screenshots of a website that shares the rent prices that you need in order to afford the a place to live. Now, let me share this with you guys. This is here in Florida. And so this is according to how much you would have to make per hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the state of Florida. And so let me enlarge this just a bit. Can I fit the page? Let's see. Oh, I don't know. Let me see. 75. Oh, okay. So you can see better. Okay, so here in Florida, it says in Florida, the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,591. That has since went up, by the way, because most of the places within my area that we have been looking at are $1,700 per month and up, just for a 2-bedroom. So for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, it's $1,700 and up, right? So with that being said, so that means you need to make at least $30.59 per hour in order to afford that rent. So it's kind of light here, but if you take a look here, now the minimum wage went up to $12 an hour back in September because we actually had a ballot initiative that we passed in 2022, I'd say, where we actually approved of a $15 an hour minimum wage, but it won't get up to $15 an hour until 2026, September of 2026 to be exact. So, but it's not that much of a difference between $11 and $12 an hour. But in order to afford an apartment at minimum wage, it says 111 hours. It may be 110, hours or something like that. But minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom rental home or apartment, right? You need 2.8, basically 3 full-time jobs at minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. How many people can have 3 full-time jobs? I don't know anybody that can work 3 full-time jobs. So this is just me in Florida. We're not taking into account New York, California, Colorado, Hawaii. Yes, you have some of the more affordable states like Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina. You have the more lower cost states, but you still have to make a significant amount of money more than a minimum wage in order to be able to afford to live there. So we people are at our wits' end right now. So there's a lot of people that are turning to things like squatting. And what is squatting? Squatting is basically going into a owned house or apartment unit that is either abandoned or not necessarily abandoned, like it's still owned, but nobody's living there and nobody is using it for anything. It's been vacant for quite some time, and then someone comes in and lives in it, essentially, as if they own it. It's they're occupying it. And there are, different states that have different laws regarding squatters' rights. Because if you squat in certain states, if you squat and you start to get your mail there, then the landlord or the owner would have to contest in court to get you moved out. The thing is like, should people have to resort to squatting in the first place? I would say no. But what recourse do people have? So I'm going to share this as well because I think this is really important. Let me see. Yes, I have it right here. So let's go into this gentleman as he's sharing places to squat, and now people are furious. Furious! They mad.
Crisis, one determined housing advocate / TikTok star has made it his mission to help put a roof over people's heads. Over the weekend, his mission got the attention of Americans, many of whom now say he needs to be dead.
Just a public service announcement for any rich people who live in a rich suburb and land banking an empty house. Just remember to change the lock.
This is housing advocate Purple Pingers, aka Jordan Vandenberg, and he's got a message for the owners of some of Australia's roughly 136,000 empty homes.
Homes are for people to live in, not for rich people to make money off.
Late last week, Mr. Pingers let the internet know he was collecting the addresses of vacant properties through his website.
There's a link which will let you submit just a vacant house.
And over the weekend, he published a handful of set addresses, albeit for a few hours before deleting them, encouraging anyone who needed a house to go for it.
Fun fact, squatting in Australia is not necessarily illegal, which is the best type of legal, especially if the front door doesn't actually lock. Use a free house if you want it.
In Australia, everyone has the right of entry to a property, an implied right of entry. You can enter a vacant property through an unlocked door, but as soon as the owner of the property realises you're in there, they can ask you to leave. And you can't disobey that order. As soon as you're tampering with locks or breaking windows or something like that, that may count as burglary or trespass, and they may get the sheriff or the police involved.
So essentially, if the door is unlocked or if things are left open and you come in and start living there, then that's technically legal in Australia. Now, the laws may vary here from state to state in the United States, but there in Australia, it's legal as long as you don't break in. If the door is unlocked or if it's open, that's the law there. And so otherwise, it's breaking and entering. So that's what I find very interesting. Is it's like if you don't care about your property enough to lock it, that's all I'm going to say.
For his work, Ping has received a mixed response of praise and death threats. But when news of his exploits hit the States, this is how they took it.
Yeah, I wouldn't try that crap in Texas. Arrest this criminal!
You will get a lot of people killed. We have the right to remove squatters.
Labelled a commie, reported to Elon Musk, and with his DMs popping off, Ping has decided to start a list of vacant properties in the United States too. And here's how that went down.
No! God, please, no!
Anyway, it's all kicking off. So, any regrets?
If you need a house, I'll, I don't know, keep letting you know where some are for you to live in.
Well, joining us now is
So this is I'm telling you right now, man, this is going to be interesting because there's some things that were said that I'm just really interested in hearing you guys' response to, because I'm look, people have the right to have housing, and honestly, it should not be paywalled. At the very least, just basic homes. But I'll get on my soapbox afterwards. Let's go.
Purple Pingers himself. It's Jordan. G'day, Jordan. Look, I know we're in a pretty serious housing crisis, but do you really think that encouraging people to squat on private property is the way to fix it?
Yeah, look, let me answer your question by asking you another question. Do you think it's right that we have thousands of vacant, abandoned homes while we have people living on the street?
No, I don't. But
sorry.
is this...
Okay, so here's the thing. She says she don't. And ask anybody there, is it right for us to have thousands of vacant homes? For them in Australia, it's thousands of vacant homes. For us, it's millions of vacant homes while you have hundreds of thousands of people living on the street. I want you to answer that question. Do you think it's right? Is housing a right or a privilege? Now, I want you to answer this question for me. If housing is a privilege to you, then why is it considered unacceptable for children to be unhoused? If it is a privilege to be housed, then you should be okay with kids being out on the street right now. But you're not. You're not. Why? Because they'll die if they don't have housing. What do you think happens to human beings? What do you think happens? Disease and you know, being subject to the elements and all these different things. Why in the world don't you think it's okay? Look, when you go camping, what do you put up? A tent. What is that? What is a tent? Housing, right? Even when we go to the great outdoors, we create housing for ourselves, right? Even if you take a sheet and a piece of timber, put it in the middle, you got housing. So if that's the case, why do you think it's a privilege? Yes. Nod your heads. Yes, housing is a right. Absolutely. It's a right. Because we're human beings and we need housing. Let's continue, folks. Let's go.
Is this the right way to handle it, though? I mean, shouldn't we focus it on policy?
Yeah, I think there's definitely room to focus on policy, but what do we do in the meantime when people are on the street while we're focusing on policy?
Just wait. Is that what people tell you? Let me ask you something. If somebody's starving to death and they don't have any food and they need food now, are you going to tell them to just wait? If somebody's thirsty and they're about to die from thirst, just wait. Are we going to keep telling people that? Just wait? When they need housing now? He's right. Continue on. Let me go back just a couple of seconds. All right.
Focusing on policy.
Use the word abandoned. Who owns a house and abandons it, Jordan?
Many people. I don't know if you've ever gone down the street and seen like houses empty for decades, but I certainly have.
I haven't.
No.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Nope.
How many? Do you have any abandoned investment properties, Steve?
No, I don't. But I mean, I'm just trying to get to the economics of this. If someone buys a property, I mean, yes, we've had land banking, obviously, from foreigners, but that's not widespread. There's not thousands of them.
On the census night, we had 10% of all housing stock vacant. But like, you know, I asked people for less than 48 hours and I've already got over 300 responses.
He got over 300 responses of vacant homes for people to live in, for people to squat in. And he's just a single guy by himself. Imagine what a government can do if they actually renovated and gave housing to people who needed housing. Imagine what that could do. You be saving lives, man. Saving lives.
And like, I'm not the government, so I don't have the resources to ask everyone. But yeah, if you've got like over 300 places that have been abandoned for more than 2 years, some up to 20 years, I think it's a problem that exists.
Thank you for clarifying. You are not indeed.
So one of the things that I also wanted to point out is there is a lot of real estate developers and landlords that will keep their properties vacant. I can't tell you, like, okay, there are tons and tons of vacant houses, vacant units that sit vacant for weeks, months, years at a time without anybody occupying, and yet you got people living on the street. Is that just? Is that right? Also, I'm going to say this right now too. I don't care if you're sleeping on the couch, you're homeless. If you have to live in a hotel under duress, meaning you have no other choice, you are homeless. If you're having to shack up with other people under duress because you don't have the free choice to live on your own, you are essentially homeless. Let me tell you something. There are a lot more homeless people than even what we see in a census. And I'm going to get back to this because he has some really good important points, but I want to share this as well. Because a lot of people are like, how many vacant homes do we really have? And here's the answer. It says the United States boasts approximately 1.51 million vacant homes, a staggering number that accounts for 10.5% of the country's total housing inventory. These homes stand like silent sentinels, their windows boarded up, lawns overgrown, and dreams of habitation deferred. But why? And so I'm not going to sign up for this to read the entire thing, but that's one of the points that a lot of people do not consider, is that there are millions of vacant homes that are sitting there for people, to just own, to just have in their portfolios. And then they buy or they sell or then they rent it out. And then once you rent it out, then guess what? It's just like what he said in the prior video on TikTok. A lot of these landlords will have a renter come in and you're essentially paying the mortgage for the landlord. Not just paying the mortgage for the landlord, but you also may be paying the property taxes for the landlord and maintenance costs. And then the landlord also probably collects a little bit of profit on the side too. So the landlord is basically using you to build equity on a home that they're not paying for. Does that sound fair? You're paying equity on a home that they don't live in? You're paying the mortgage on a home that all they had to do was cough up the down payment and now it's theirs. Or sometimes they don't even have to cough up that big of a down payment. A lot of people have gotten homes off of foreclosure. And so they didn't have to put that much money down. They just so happened to come into, a few $1,000s, or they may have inherited that few $1,000s, or they exploited their way to get that few $1,000s, or some of them may have legitimately saved a few $1,000s, but then now they're using it to leech off the rest of the population. And so then guess what? They literally own the home simply because they're in a more privileged position. And then because they have that privileged position, they they rent it out, and then you end up paying for the home while they rake in all the equity and all the wealth from the home. So when push comes to shove, they have all the money. And let's say they sell the home, right? Let's say the home, let's just put even $100,000, right? We know homes are not going for that no more. But let's just say where back then a home was $100,000 and they rented it out, right? They put what? $10,000 down on it or something like that, right? Because they had the credit and they were able to get the home. Through the loan. Then they have a series of people over the years paying rent. And then they end up paying off the mortgage. But then it comes time to sell that property. That property goes up in value. So it goes from $100,000 to $200,000. And the people who help build that equity, the renters, are they going to get any of that piece of that home that they help build up? No. Who gets all that wealth? Homes are meant to be lived in. Homes are meant to be lived in. I just hate this whole for-profit scheme that we have. Let's continue.
Problem that exists. Thank you for clarifying. You are not indeed the government, Jordan. I appreciate that. So you put this up. Are people actually moving into these homes?
Yes. Not from the public ones, though.
So not from the ones you've listed?
Yeah.
So it's happening What, privately, word of mouth or something?
Yeah. Like if someone needs a house, they can reach out to me and I can send them an empty home.
What sort of people are moving into these homes? You're seeing families with kids and...
It's mainly people just experiencing housing insecurity, and that can look like anyone.
Do they?
And so, yes, it looks like anyone. There's a ton of people that are experiencing housing insecurity, including a lot of teenagers, especially a lot of teenagers that are part of the LGBTQ plus community. They are overrepresented in reality for the unhoused kids on our streets too. Why? Because you got a lot of parents that do not accept their children being LGBTQ and they don't want them living in their house. So guess what? They kick them out. And then you got these kids that are living out in the streets. This is this is how a lot of times things like addiction, violence will happen to them while they're out in the street. Some of them may have to turn to doing certain occupations that some people consider deeply unsavory in order to survive. Because some people just don't like that lifestyle. And so that also perpetuates the homelessness rate. And a lot of them don't want to turn to the authorities because they'll get placed in foster homes. And some of these people there are some foster parents that do very well, that do good work. I'm not taking from them. But there are others that are also either exploitative or abusive as well. And so some of these kids do not want to go into the system because of how they're treated. What do we do with them?
They hook the house up to electricity, power, gas?
Haven't asked him.
So they're just basically camping out in abandoned homes with no power.
Yeah, I guess it's raining in Melbourne at the moment, so I guess camping out inside is probably better than camping out in a bush.
What about?
What would you rather have? Would you rather have people subject to inclement weather outside, or would you rather have them be able to at least have some type of shelter? But oh my God, they don't have electricity. Some of y'all rich folks go out camping and you guys go to a cabin with wood burning stoves and a fireplace and they ain't got no electricity. And you guys seem okay with that. But the moment somebody squats in a house with no electricity, y'all got a problem with it. What? Oh, so now it's beyond the pale. Some of y'all go camping without no electricity. See, it's always okay when a rich person does it, but it's considered classless when a poor person does it. Let's continue.
The idea that you might be encouraging people to, break the locks and move into a property. I mean, you say you don't do that, but if someone finds out from you, Jordan, that this house in this street's vacant, has been for 2 years, and it is locked, how do you know they're not going to go around there and bust the lock and get in?
I'm definitely not advocating that anyone.
Well, I know you're
breaks
not
into
advocating it, but how do you know it's not going to happen?
Well, squatting's legal, breaking and entering is not legal, and I think that's where I'd leave it.
You also...
He doesn't know because he doesn't know exactly what these people are going to do. Now, if he knows that it's unlocked and it's vacant, well, okay, he pointed out. But if somehow a landlord comes and puts a lock on it before people ever get to it, well, then I guess then they're just going to have to move on and go to a different place. But it's not like he's telling them to break locks or anything like that. It's wild, man. They're trying to make it look like he's encouraging breaking the law, which he's not. It's like people are going to do the things that they're going to do. He's just basically just pointing. That's all he's really doing. Hey, that one is vacant. You know?
They say good people disobey bad laws.
Certainly, yeah.
So is that one of those bad laws you would want them to disobey?
No comment while eat.
Okay, so his shirt says good people disobey bad laws. Interesting shirt, right? You know, I wish cops did that. I wish cops would disobey bad laws. But then they wouldn't be cops. Let's continue.
Well, you can say no comment, but it's kind of the heart of the matter, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like I think this is a pretty big ethical question that we need to ask ourselves. And we've got, you know, the government promising a couple houses in a decade or two from now, while we have people living on the street and empty homes. And I think, like, you know, we've got adverse possession laws in Australia, and we've got, you know, squatting is legal in Australia. So what's the solution? I think it's staring at us.
Well, how'd you like to have someone squat in your place that you own?
It's not vacant, nor is it an investment property. So
you understand my question, don't you?
Look, if I had an investment property that was vacant for more than 2 years, for example, I would put it on the list.
So, Jordan, I think we can all agree that what you're proposing is not the ideal solution.
So, hold on. This guy tried. He tried. This dude tried. Oh my gosh. He tried and he got squashed. Hang on. Let's break this down real quick.
Question, don't you?
Look, if I had...
Hang on. What'd he say?
I think it's staring at us.
Well, how'd you like to have someone squat in your place that you own?
It's not vacant, nor is it an investment property. So
you understand my question, don't you?
Look, if I had...
He said, how would you like if somebody squatted in your house? You can't squat and the place is already occupied. Israel. You can't squat in the place that's already occupied. And so therefore, for somebody like him, well, squatters wouldn't be able to get there because it's being lived in. Right? So, and if you own a property that hasn't been occupied, that has been lived in, well, you're literally withholding a place for somebody to live in simply because you want to exploit more working people for the money that they have so that you can extract money from them for your property, for your own wealth.
An investment property that was vacant for more than 2 years, for example, I would put it on the list.
So, Jordan, I think we can all agree that what you're proposing is not the ideal solution.
No, absolutely.
The ideal solution is that there would be some kind of policy response to deal with land that's just not being used in this way. What would you like to see?
Well, I'd like to see like a national vacant residential land tax that is quite prohibitive to either encourage people to rent out your house or sell it or do something with it. Just don't let it sit there while we have a housing crisis. It's pretty simple.
I tell you what, Jordan, I follow you on TikTok and I always thought you were kind of putting on that cool voice, but now I hear it and I'm like, I'll follow you into battle. It's unbelievable.
Thank you, mate.
Now, this has blown up a bit, especially online in America. How are you going with that attention? Are they angry at you? And Americans can be very angry with people.
Yeah, Americans just want to kill homeless people. That's what I've noticed. It's not nice.
Well, squatting isn't really legal in the States, so is that a concern?
What did he say? Hang on.
Yeah, Americans just want to kill homeless people. That's what I've noticed. It's not nice.
How many homeless people die each and every single year? How many times have we had different city ordinances and laws passed to move homeless people out of an area because they're just a sight sore, an eyesore. Or we just don't want them around. But yet we don't provide housing for them. I tell you, this guy, he sees what our government does to the unhoused, does to people who are exploited within this system. Man, he ain't said a lie. Where's the lie?
Nice. Well, squatting isn't really legal in the States. So is that a concern for this whole kind of idea?
Yeah, last time, look, I'm not an American lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but last time I checked, adverse possession laws existed in every state, each 50 states. So I don't know, I'd have to ask a lawyer, I reckon.
All right, Jordan. Wow, it's quite the crusade. Thanks so much for talking to us tonight.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Let's get their thoughts at the end, because I just really want to, hear what they say, because a lot of times, a lot of people say, well, it's just, he's just not going about it the right way. And it's like, well, if you go about it the right way, then it's going to take too long and more people are going to die. So what do we do in the interim? And a lot of times people will go, and here's the funny part. When it comes to actually doing things for the people, the government, because it's owned by the corporations, will drag their feet in order to help the people, or they just won't help the people at all. And they'll place barriers and say things like, oh, but the parliamentarian. And so then things don't actually get done because they don't want it to get done for people like you and me. And so it's like, all right, well, I guess we're no longer going to keep asking. We're just going to take. We're going to do what the corporations do. And so that's basically what the people have resorted to. All right, the only language you know, the only language you speak is for us to take because you guys take. All right, well, we'll just take. And so that's what they're resorting to. You left them no choice. And so that's what's happening. Because they're not going to lay down and die just because you want to withhold housing.
I don't agree with the way he's doing this and the tactics he's using, but I think one thing he has highlighted is we do have a lot of vacant houses. And so I think it's incumbent upon
10%?
No, wouldn't be 10%.
We should clarify that census figure is not a good figure to use.
No.
Because all that captures is what dwellings were vacant on that night.
On one night.
And that was during a lockdown. So that could be people who were trapped overseas. There could be people who were on holiday. There's all sorts of things. So that's a bad stat to use.
We shove that to one side. So, but I think it's incumbent on local councils and state governments to do a proper survey on how many places are vacant, how long they've been vacant for. Once we've got that real data, then let's work out what to do.
Would you do a land tax? A vacant land tax? Why not? What else would you do?
No way. No. I think you could probably force sales of these places.
That's more bolshy than the land tax. He's gone really commie.
Well, I mean, Steve, he's got a history, this guy. And
forced sale upon the places. I mean, I'm not necessarily against that. The thing is, it's like, if it's not lived in, then yeah. I mean, eminent domain and force a sale and just take it in, have it owned, community owned, and given to people. And here's the funny part. A lot of times people will get mad and say, oh my God, you want people to live in these lavish, extravagant houses. No, I don't. Look, I think people need a bedroom, a living room, a bathroom, and a kitchen. And a place to put their stuff, which is like a closet, right? Make sure the bathroom has a tub or shower, sink, and a toilet, right? Make sure everything's up to code and everything's clean. Same thing with the kitchen, right? It doesn't have to be some big old stove. You know, when I had my first place, the stove was literally like that wide, right? It was not a full stove. It was like kind of half the size, half the width, right? Still have 4 burners in the oven, right? And then you give them a fridge to keep their cold food in, right? And then you have a living space, you know, for them to be in, right? And I had a studio. You can give somebody a studio or an efficiency, and they're good. Have a place nearby for people to wash their clothes and things like that, and that's it. You're good. And how many times have we seen pictures of different cities in China where they have these huge apartment buildings where even the people who are unhoused, they're not going to be unhoused for long. They're going to be put in one of those apartments so that they can live and not have to be out on the street. Why can't we do that here? Right? You should not ever have to worry about being out on the street, ever, in this country. And it's sick how we think that housing is a privilege when in reality it is an absolute right. Now, if you want something bigger, okay, fine. But if you want something bigger, you should be living in it. I just do not believe in holding investment property just to make more money. So, yeah, so that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. And I want to share his website. So his website here that he has, Jordy Vanderberg, he actually has the website in question. It's called shitrentals.org. I kid you not. That's the actual name of the website. Oh, jeez. All right, so I'm going to share the link in the chat for you guys. But this is essentially a site that directs people to different reviews of properties that landlords own, and it basically is a review of landlords. So let's go to the About section. Let's read this. It's very short, but it's sweet. It says, this website is about giving power back to renters. Hang on, let me enlarge this because I think this is probably showing up a little bit small. It says, as a renter, landlords and real estate agents have access to so much information about you, but you don't get that same level of transparency from them. Real estate agents often provide photos of properties that are years out of date and don't tell you what it's like to actually live there. This is true because I actually looked up my place, and the photos I see are from when before I moved in, and I've been here for almost 11 years. So it's definitely out of date. It says, you don't get to enter into a new rental knowing how difficult it might be for you to request basic repairs to be completed. People don't purposefully get in to business deals or rental agreements with slumlords. Renters always find out the person is a slumlord after the fact, unless they actually talk to other renters who are renting from that landlord. Then they'll find out, oh, yeah, this guy's a slumlord. But a lot of times we don't get to talk to other renters, and we don't get to know who they are. And then a lot of times a couple of fresh coats of paint and maybe a good tile job and everything, you think everything is kosher when in reality it's not. So that's another point. Says this website is here to help. It will always be free, and there will be no ability for landlords or real estate agents to pay for reviews to be removed. Do your part to help your fellow renters by writing an anonymous review of your rental property or real estate agency. At this stage, I'll be reviewing each submission each night and uploading submissions to this page. So if you don't see your review immediately, don't stress. Let's work together. So he has this website which reviews different properties, agencies, property database, and agency database. So look, you can submit a rental. Right now it's Australia or basically New Zealand. And you can put the agency or private landlord. You can do I live there or I inspected the property. 1 star is shit rental. 5-star equals great rental. And then you can post a review. You can actually drop images. And then there's a declaration that says I confirm that I've been a tenant of this property and or have inspected this property and that my review is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. I confirm that the above statement by typing in your email address in the text below. You'll receive a confirmation email requesting a validation code. Your review will not go live until your email is validated. The reason I'm asking for your email, which will not be published and only be visible to me, is so that reviews are trustworthy. And that in the event of a landlord or real estate agency disagrees with the content of your review and wants me to take it down, I want to give you a chance to respond to their allegations. If they are lying, your review stays up. Your email address will never be provided to anyone. And then you place your email address and then you can submit. So with that being said, I would certainly love to see something like this here in the United States. Wouldn't you? Jordy Vandenberg, if you ever get to see this, please make a submission for the United States. I beg of you. Or if you are somebody that's tech savvy, that's watching right now, that has the time and the bandwidth and energy to do something like this here in the United States, I would love for you to do the same for people like me. Because we want to know. Renters would love to know, right? We don't want to be subject to the Zillows and the apartments.coms and all these other companies that are really owned by the real estate and landlords that push these reviews out there. We actually want renters to talk to renters. We want to democratize the process. I think that's what we need to do. I think that would be beautiful. Isn't this a great idea? That's a great idea, right? My goodness. Let me share the link in the chat one more time, just so y'all got it. All right, there we go. So that's one of the things I think that's important. Now, of course, the landlords are mad. They're angry. They're perturbed. And why? Because he dared do this. Here's an article here. It says far-left anti-landlord activist launches address directive of empty properties for squatters to seize. It says Australian anti-landlord activists are sharing information on empty properties across the country for squatters to take over and potentially steal the deeds from their original owners. Jordy Vandenberg, also known as Purple Pingers, has been posting the addresses of homes he has just staked out in Victoria, New South Wales, and Tasmania. Vandenberg is behind the site shitrentals.org, which purports to be a resource for prospective tenants to use to learn more about landlords prior to signing a rental agreement. Real estate agents often provide photos of properties that are years out of date and don't tell you what it's like to actually live there. You don't get to enter into a new rental knowing about how difficult it might be for your request might be for you to request basic repairs to be completed. Says, and tenants are invited to leave reviews of properties they have experiences with in an effort to warn potential future occupants about any potential issues with property maintenance, landlord behavior, or other concerns. Properties then are listed on the site in a directory where the reviews and ratings. On his TikTok, Vanderberg has also visited tenants in distress and have called him for help, exposing poor landlords who leave their tenants in units that require dire maintenance and do not fulfill work orders. You know what this reminds me of? This is basically like Keith Lee reviewing restaurants, but except it's for tenants, right? Anybody who watches TikTok, especially Black people who watch TikTok, you guys know who Keith Lee is, right? Keith Lee is basically a dude, and he sits in his car, and he sits like this, and he's kind of monotone, and he speaks kind of fast, and he sounds just like this when he talks, and he's always ends it with like, God bless. And I went to this restaurant, and this restaurant was really good. I wanted to see for myself. You know, he's sounding like that, right? But he gives restaurants, especially all over the United States, especially in Black areas, if Keith Lee shows up in your restaurant, oh my gosh, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure that our food and everything is on point because Keith Lee is visiting, right? Well, what if we had that for apartments and houses for rent? Because they're not looking out for us. All right, let's continue. Says, while shitrentals.org appears to have a good mission, Vanderberg's latest venture is sparking some controversy. The activist now compiling an address directory for empty homes with the intention of tipping off squatters to occupy him. Says Vanderberg listed addresses of 5 properties in Victoria, New South Wales, Tasmania, and Southern Australia he claims are empty. Vanderberg appears to have staked out the locations, warning that one of the addresses has an individual who does the lawn maintenance. Vanderberg also encouraging other social media users to submit the addresses of empty properties through a form on his website. If the government won't do anything about the rich hoarding empty homes, make them. I'm going to read this again. If the government won't do anything about the rich hoarding empty homes, make them. All right, let's continue. Vanderberg says one of his TikToks on the effort showing off one of the empty homes he had located. So it's different. So though it differs from its American counterpart, squatting in Australia is considered a legal gray area with many caveats. An occupier is technically allowed to enter the home, so as long as they can do so without breaking any locks or windows. They are able to stay until they have been formally ordered to leave. While it varies from state to state, Australia maintains adverse occupancy rights, which refers to a legal principle where individuals can acquire ownership of land through unchallenged use over a certain period of time. This principle allows someone who has occupied land without the owner's permission for a specified time to claim legal ownership under certain conditions, such as open and notorious use. In most Australian states, an adverse occupier can make a claim to own the property after 12 years of use. There is no provision or adverse possession in the Australian Capital Territory or Northern Territories. There are, though rare, there have been some instances in which squatters have fully taken over the deeds for properties in Australia under adverse occupancy rights. In 1998, Sydney property developer Barry Gertos walked into a 3-bedroom house taking it as his own after learning the elderly owner had died. He renovated the property, changed the locks, and even rented out the home for 20 years. In 2018, he won the title to the house, and he sold it in 2020, making $1.4 million in the process. So yeah, they mad. By the way, just to let you guys know, there may be different laws in different states, but there are some rich neighborhoods where some very empty large homes. So with that being said, I'm going to end it here because, well, y'all know how I feel about landlords. You guys know how I feel about housing. And as far as housing is a human right. And it's kind of funny because I would love to get back to a gift economy. And what is a gift economy? So, you know how you have friends and you go out to eat and you'll be like, hey, you want to go to Five Guys with us? And your friend goes, well, I don't have any money. And you go, I didn't ask if you had any money. I just asked if you wanted to go to Five Guys with us. And they're like, yeah, okay, I got you, right? And then after you pay for their meal, they go, hey, thanks. And they go, I got you next. Okay, cool. Next thing you know, that person goes, hey, you want to go to this soul food restaurant with me? Well, I don't have any money. I didn't ask if you had any money. All right, cool. Then they treat you out to a soul food restaurant. Well, guess what? You go to that soul food restaurant, you guys eat, you guys have a great time. I got you next. All right, cool. It's basically a I got you next economy. Back in the day, there was a lot of indigenous folks that when someone grew up, especially if they got married or had a family, the community would come together and actually build the house or help them build the house for them. Once that house is built, it's their home, free and clear. And did they have to put out all this money? No, the community came together and helped to build the house. And so that person now owns that home. And so the whole deal is, why aren't we doing that now? Why aren't we just, because we have this surplus of vacant homes, why aren't we just giving the homes to people who need it? It doesn't have to be the biggest home in the world. It doesn't have to be anything big or extravagant. But as long as they have their utilities, right, which is electricity, clean water, and an internet connection, because internet connection is now vital for survival in this country. They have their garbage pickup, because I consider that essential too. As long as they have those things and you're able to help them with other things, I think you should be able to do that. I think that depending on if the person is either in a relationship or single, depending on the amount of people that live, then that's how you do by the bedrooms. So if you have 2 people, but they're in a relationship, 1 bedroom. If you have 2 people, they're not in a relationship, 2 bedroom. If you have 3 people if you have 3 people, but 2 of them are in a relationship, 1 of them's not, then you can just give, like for instance, a mom and dad or parents and a kid. All right, 2 bedroom, right? But that's the thing. We can actually have something much greater, much better for everyone instead of having this for-profit system that locks out people from actually being able to live. So I just want to thank Jordy Vandenberg for doing what he's doing. And this is, for all intents and purposes, a good news story, right? It's a good news story because people are now finding ways to fight back against the system. And if you really want to end squatting, which I honestly want to end squatting, I don't want squatting. I want people to not have to resort to squatting. I want people to just be given homes, even if it's just something small. And then once you get off your feet and you start working and you can afford something a little bit bigger, okay, then you can move out. And then that unit could be used for somebody else who's unhoused. But we need to have housing for people. And when I say housing for people, I mean housing that is not limited to just being a shelter. No, give them housing. Let's do the model that's being done in Finland. Nobody should ever be homeless. I want to get rid of homelessness. And that's the way to do it. Anyway, with that being said, did you like the stream? Go ahead and give the stream a like. Thank you so very much. Let's go into the chat and see what you guys think. I would like to get your thoughts because I thought that was, a pretty cool story. Since we're talking about things like this. Okay. Roger Meadow says, Jay, it doesn't have to be vacant for them to squat. The video shows it right here. Oh, interesting. Hang on. Oh, let's go here. Hang on. This should be interesting. What you got for me, Roger?
A squatting showdown caught on camera. It is a scene that highlights how some homeowners across the country are battling squatters who try to use the law to take control of a property. Trevor Alt is here with the story. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Rebecca. So these headlines come as the NYPD says a homeowner was actually murdered by a pair of squatters that she walked in on. And officials want to avoid potentially dangerous confrontations. But the process of legally removing a squatter can be extremely frustrating and expensive and time consuming. And some homeowners, like the one we're about to see, are fed up.
You shouldn't be trying to steal my house. Yes, you are.
This morning, a squatter standoff caught on camera by our station WABC.
There's a man sleeping right there. Get out of my house.
Adele Andaloro says she inherited this New York City house, but a group of people moved in and changed the locks. The NYPD called in, arresting one man.
Why is it that I have to leave and he doesn't have to leave?
Because technically he can't be kicked out. You need to go to court.
But this man, forcing his way back inside, was allowed to stay. He told investigative reporter Dan Krauth he signed a lease in October, though he showed no proof.
So how does this all end then? When do you leave?
The way it ends is either she pays me my money that I put into the house, pay me the money, and I'll leave, or send me to court, and we deal with the judge in court.
In New York City, squatters have tenants' rights after 30 days, making this a landlord-tenant dispute. So when Adele had the locks changed again...
You're getting arrested right now?
I'm being arrested.
For what?
For being in my own home.
Police then took her away in handcuffs for unlawful eviction. When it comes to squatters, homeowners across the country have to navigate a slew of laws which vary by state. In Chicago, Danielle Cruz told our station WLS when she tried to sell her home in 2022, a woman moved in claiming to have a lease.
So we show up with the cops, and there's a young woman in there with all of her belongings. They said, unfortunately, they couldn't prove that she was trespassing. We have to go to court and follow the eviction process.
But one man is fighting back.
I understand you've been squatting at this residence.
ABC's Jacqueline Lee met with Flash Shelton, who calls himself the squatter hunter.
Is this a growing problem?
I think that it's a growing problem like anything else.
When a squatter took over his mother's house, Flash had her lease the home to him, and then he moved in with the squatter until they left. He's now using the same tactic at other homes.
I would have had a right as a leaseholder to go in, move in on him, put cameras on, and eventually lock him out, and that I could force him to civilly try to fight to get back into a property that he couldn't prove that he had a legal right to be in.
Experts advise always getting an attorney to navigate legal evictions, but warn it can be costly and take several months.
Squatters are looking for an opportunity, and if they think a property is not being maintained or visited, they may make attempts to enter that property that they have no rights to enter in.
And part of the reason this is even possible is because of loopholes in tenancy laws. For obvious reasons, you can't have a landlord be able to change the locks at any time if there's a person who is staying there. Of course, this process can be maddening, and that New York case at the beginning of the piece, that's still unresolved. She will have to go to court to get those people out of her house.
Interesting. Wouldn't have this problem if we actually didn't commodify housing the way we do. Why do people squat in the first place? Like, if you already have a home, you're not going to squat into another home. It doesn't make sense, right? People squat into homes because they don't have a place to go. Let's see what they say. Because here you have 3 millionaires. That's probably going to say otherwise.
Unfortunate, can cost her time and money.
It could be more than a year.
And even not even be able to have access to your home for a while.
Yeah, after her parents passed. That's the only reason she has the home.
Oh, wow. All right, Trevor. Thank you for highlighting that.
Now, I mean, if, you inherited the house, and let's say you inherit a house, right? And you're renting. You can always go live in the house, or you can just sell it. But if you're hanging on to it, that's a vacant home where people could be living in. I'm just saying, like a perfect example. My grandmother and my step-grandfather owned their home for over 50 years. Now, that home got wiped from underneath them because some real estate developer decided to take it from her because of failure to pay taxes. So he got the home for essentially pennies on the dollar. So that home was stripped away from us. But let's say, hypothetically, my grandmother passed last year. She was able to pass the home on down to us, and we inherited the home. Well, I sure as hell wouldn't still be sitting here in Orlando, Florida right now. I'd be living up there in New Jersey again. Real talk. Or we'd be making plans to move in. Now, if a squatter took over the place, yeah, I would be mad because I'm a renter trying to live in my grandmother's house. Now, that's one thing. But if I already own a home and then they leave, the house, or if your parents pass away and then squatters come in, that's a whole another thing. But to negate this, just start making homes available for people so that people won't ever have to worry about homelessness in the first place. Right? So let's go to the rest of the chat. Somebody said something that I want to. Oh man, somebody said something that I wanted to highlight too. I saw it. Yeah, so basically, nobody actually really wants to squat. It's not like they're doing it just for, you know, for kicks, right? I'm trying not to cuss because, you know, but of course. Katie Lewis says, won't anybody please think of the property? These out of touch news panelists. Yeah, because it's like, how many vacant properties do we have here in the United States? Jacqueline says, if a property hasn't been used for a long time, what is wrong with squatting in it? As long as the property is safe for human habitation, if the government doesn't like it, they should make sure that everybody has adequate housing. That's what I'm saying. If we don't like it, change the laws, right? But what do we do in the meantime, right? Ghost Nest says, my landlord is selling the duplex I'm in, and she was all apologetic for some reason. Funny how she wants me to manage her guilt about it too. Interesting. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm selling the place. And it's like, yeah, and you're pushing me out, right? Retro Gamer says tons of empty malls as well. That could also be retrofitted into being apartments for people. Just saying. See, Christopher says, Second Thought also has a good video about landlord software on his YouTube. I got to take a look at that. But yeah, thank you so very much. Soul Contract says banks own the houses. Yeah, I don't think banks should own homes either. That was funny. Ed Royce says homie is saying real ish to her face, and PMC doesn't know how to handle it. Yeah, because these millionaires, they don't know how to handle when people say, oh my gosh, what do you do when, when people are unhoused? And a lot of times people just go, well, it's just the way the world is. It's just sad, but it's just the way things are. And then you just give up. And then that's when you go to live in your lavish house, one of your lavish homes, and then you just forget about it. This is why they actually want to move homeless people out, because they don't want people to be reminded of the grotesques of this country. The laws that basically make it so that you're paywalled from things that you need to survive. Chris says, not just a right, JB, but a natural right, because we all have to live somewhere. And if we didn't have it as a right, we'd all be living in a road. Yep. Absolutely. I think a lot of times people just don't realize that. Randall Online says it's a right, especially in this modern age of prosperity. Yep. Damn right. Roger says minimum wage is a regulation. It becomes irrelevant when workers own the economy through worker co-ops. I agree. Thank you so very much for that, Roger. Yep. Amanda says, sorry, JB, I was in the wrong chat on your channel. I kept watching two shows all at once all the time, but sometimes when I go to my comments, I make the... It's all good. Amanda, good to see you. Nice to have you in the chat, too. Lino says, squatters are based. I know very successful one that studied law. Interesting. Like I say, I am of the opinion where I do not want people to have to resort to squatting. Squatting is really something people do out of duress, and I don't want them to have to do it. See what I mean? It's like, okay, I see you have no other choice, but I don't want you to have to do it. That's why I think we should start having a housing first system, so that squatting is no longer necessary. That's how I feel. Amanda says, I remember Crystal and Sagar from back when they had 100,000 subscribers. Are used to always chatting them up like every day. Made my ex-psycho jealous. Anyway, Sagar's not wrong on every. I don't know what you're talking about on that one, but thank you very much. All right. All right. So I'm going to get going because it is after 4 and I am just like, whoa, I was supposed to have ended a while back. But we're going to be talking about some stuff later this week. I have some readings coming up later this week that we'll be getting into. Sorry, my sinuses still acting up from the allergies. I had to take some allergy medicine today. But one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to continue the reading of Water and the Spirit by Melodoma Patrice Somé. We're going to continue in the reading of that. We're also going to continue the reading of The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks. We're going to continue in that reading. The last reading was, it was so good. So good. I mean, it just how we as men are pushed to be robotic by this system, and it causes us to leave the beautiful parts of ourselves in order to essentially be warriors for profit, right? For the profit seekers in this system, and to lay down our lives as cannon fodder. It blows the mind. So, beautiful reading. And then we'll continue in the reading of chapter, I think it's chapter 7. Yes, chapter 7 of Laziness Does Not Exist. And then we'll get into the conclusion. I cannot believe we're almost done with this book. So Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. We're going to be getting into that as well. So this was a wonderful show. I want to thank Sabby Sabs so much for coming on to have that very great discussion. Her analysis was right on time, and I think it's important that we continuously think about not just class, but identity and how they intersect. I know some people don't like that word intersectionality, but it is real and it needs to be considered, especially from those of us who are trying to push for a better system. We need to also look at the different marginalized people and how they are depressed in a special way and how we lift them up in a special way. I liken it to, you know how a lot of people say a rising tide lifts all boats, right? But what if some of those boats are either slightly underwater or some are at the bottom of the ocean? What do you do for those boats that are at the bottom of the ocean? Well, because a rising tide does not completely lift them. Well, wouldn't you need a special circumstance like a crane to lift that boat to the surface? And then you take the water out of that boat so that it can float. Well, then you just did something special for that particular boat that you didn't need to do for all the other boats that rose to the surface. That being said, for some of us that are marginalized, you may need to do more special circumstances for us to get us to the surface of the water so that when a rising tide does come, it actually does lift all boats. That's what we call things like reparations. And that is something that people really need to come to terms with. We got to talk about it. All right. So with that being said, look, guys, I am heading out. I talk way too much. Thank you to all the patrons on Patreon and the ones on Coffee, as well as people who send me anything through PayPal. yes, I am still struggling and trying to get up the numbers so that I can be able to afford moving costs. We added boxes still. I'm going to have to utilize some people through the Orlando RBN chapter to help me pack because we need help. And then on top of that, we're going to need moving trucks. We're going to need people with trucks. We're going to need dump trucks. We're going to need all the trucks. And then we're going to need also, yeah, we're going to need a lot of help. So if you guys know of anything, we literally have to be out of here by May 31st. So any type of assistance is absolutely welcome as well. So thank you so very much. And yeah, so I wanted to end with this particular video. I was looking for it because I think it's really important for people. You know what? Maybe I should just share this. I think I'll share this because this is a really sweet video. Is there music that I can't play? Okay, no. Okay, this guy is just talking. Okay, so I want to share this because I want you to end with this. Now, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary, or read something because reading is fundamental. But always, always, always treat others how you would want to be treated. And if you would want to be housed, even in your most dire of needs, let's do that for other people. If you would like to be fed in your hour of need because you're hungry and you don't have anything, feed somebody. If you are thirsty in your hour of need and you would like for somebody to give you something to drink, give them something to drink. And also, give people the dignity of being able to choose. When people say beggars can't be choosers, no, give them the choice. You give your kids the ability to choose. Y'all go to a Burger King or something like that, and you're like, what do you want? Why can't we do that for other people? Give your fellow human beings the dignity to be able to choose. Wouldn't you like that for yourself? Empathy is the most powerful tool that we have to assist in changing this world. Use your empathy, especially for people who aren't like you. Mwah! Forehead kisses to every single one of you. I will catch you guys in the next one. I cannot wait to see what happens in the near future. You guys are wonderful. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
If you've been following me for a minute, you know one of the things I say most is that shelter, food, and medicine are human rights, and the billionaire class does not have a right to exist. And if you pay attention to my comments, you always see somebody chiming in, but communism has never worked. Show me one communist country. And what I find most frustrating is how ready people are willing to assume millions of people are lazy, rather than assuming that the billionaire class are just plain greedy. And what this video here is demonstrating, the people give back more than they take. This man is showing communism working in real time. What I'm not seeing is a billionaire coming up and taking all the money off of the board. We removed the billionaires from this equation. And now at the end of this video, he ends up with more money than he started with and uses that to help this poor lady right here. Communism can work, but it cannot work with the greed of the billionaire class.
thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.